Doctors came and said to me, you've got two options: you live with lifelong impairment, or you undergo surgery where there's a risk of bleeding in the brain and it can be fatal and you could die during the procedure.
This week on The Sick Sexy, I am joined by Sanah Shaikh. Sanah is a multi-passionate life coach who graduated with a BA in English and a Master's in Media and Communications. Sanah was born with sickle cell disease, and she has used her media presence and platform to talk about the hardships and challenges living with a hidden illness.
A lot of people haven't been able to understand what I'm going through because they can't see the illness, they can't see the pain that I go through inside my body.
And today, she's here with me. Sanah, thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of The Sick Sexy. I'm like, to say that I'm a big fan is an understatement. I have been following you on Instagram for a good couple of years now, and I'm just so honoured to have you here. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Sophia. Your words are so kind, and it's so amazing to be able to connect with you and support you on your journey and building this podcast as well. And, I'm really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, honoured to be able to connect with you.
Sanah, you are a life coach, you're a marketer, you're the CEO of your own company, you are just a jack of all trades, you're a Wonder Woman. But I found you from a Fixers poster, and it focused on, I'm going to put it up on the screen, but what I can remember at the time was I was really struck by this poster because it was an image of this beautiful, young, healthy-looking woman, and the title read, "Think Beyond What You See." And when I first saw that image, I cried because I felt really seen, and I'd never seen anything like that before. So for people who might not know what I'm referring to and who might not know about your story, can you please take us on basically your life journey and why that poster might have made me so emotional?
Just hearing you say that makes me well up a bit inside. So my journey, I was diagnosed with sickle cell at age 2, and I was the first Asian person in the northwest of England to be diagnosed. So nobody in my family had heard of it, had ever knew anything about it. There was no education about it amongst my family, amongst the community, anything like that. So I'm from Indian ethnicity. And so growing up, I had this illness, but I didn't connect with anybody at all. No friends, no family, nobody that had sickle cell, apart from when I was going into hospital and having treatments, having my appointments and things like that. So during school years, I felt a bit different, but then also was trying to just navigate life. And you don't know, when you're born with an illness, you don't know any different. You don't know what life is like without an illness. So it wasn't a huge issue. It didn't really affect me too much. I felt a bit special when I got my toilet pass in school and when I was allowed to drink more water in school in classes and things like that. But it wasn't until I hit college that it really started to impact me, not just physically but mentally as well. So all my life, and I'm sure you can relate, I've been on the medication, been in and out of hospital with crisis, the checkups, all the blood, everything, being extra careful, dealing with crisis as and when it happened. When I hit college, the stress of it all put me into hospital for 8 months, and I was just having crisis after crisis in every single part of my body. I couldn't connect with anybody. I couldn't continue with my education. I was finding it really difficult. I'd feel like I was okay, go to class, and then end up back in hospital, and it was just this really tiresome, traumatic time of my life. That continued. So I was in for 8 months. I'd had a lot of complications, and then I was set to go to university, and I went away from home because I didn't want to stay at home. I wanted to still continue to live my life, prove myself as well. And I think, I don't know if you feel the same, but there's always been this sort of back fuel of, you need to prove yourself, you're not enough, you need to make sure you're achieving just the same as everybody else who doesn't have an illness.
That hit me.
So I went to university, but still was always in this sort of roller coaster of in hospital, trying to complete uni and my social life and going out and normal conversations and relationships and but still being pulled back and forth. And then I think when I came out of the education bubble and went into work, I was like, hang on, now I really have to explain myself to employers and to a different group of people, or a whole new world of people, and prove myself on a whole different level. And I was like, I can't do this. I'm finding it really challenging and really difficult. When I'm not well, I feel so embarrassed to say I've got pain, I need to go home. I feel really like awkward having those conversations with employers or with colleagues, because we look so healthy, we look so fine. And there's times when you're at work, you're doing your job, and then all of a sudden within 5 minutes you're crippled and your body's just failing you and you're collapsing. And I don't know about you, but whenever I'm out, when I'm at work, I've always got my makeup on, I've got my clothes on. So I think there's a bit of a contrast between what you look like and what you feel.
100%. That's something, like, I love that you've talked about that, because that's something that I experience probably every day of my life when I leave my house, because when I work from home, the makeup's off and whatever, but I, as well, like you, feel this great drive. And I think for me, it's like a femininity thing. So like, you want to feel beautiful, but at the same time, there's this real divide between what you look like and how you're feeling inside. And when I'm trying to tell my boss or a coworker, hey, I'm having a crisis, and I look completely fine, like Monday just passed, I was fine, and I'm like, my arm hurts. It's really difficult for other people to understand and to empathize. And even just like you were saying, it's almost like you carry this shame with you. Like when you're trying to explain yourself, you almost feel this sense of embarrassment. And that just, to me, is so crazy, but like, I can totally relate to it.
Yeah. So that was the whole sort of message behind that campaign and that post. It's like, look beyond what you see. And I think for me it was twofold. One was, yes, I look absolutely fine, but inside my body is crumbling and my biology is struggling. And the other side was, I used to get a lot of questions from people around me, including doctors and nurses, people saying, are you sure you've got sickle cell? You're not black. And I'd be like, I can't believe I'm having to prove myself. Why would I be lying or make this up? Why would anyone make up having an illness, especially sickle cell? And
wow.
That lack of education was like, oh, hang on, you're not black, so you've not got sickle cell. It's like, hang on, you need to think a bit deeper about this. Sickle cell can affect anybody, not just one subset. So for me, that campaign was twofold. But the driving sort of force behind it was, hang on, you might have someone that you're close with, that you're working with in your community or in your circle, and you have no idea what they're going through. So it was to encourage that empathy and that compassion, and for people to really think, hang on, if someone says they're not well, I'm not going to judge it. I'm just going to believe them, let them, just without judgment, just to try and take away some judgment.
I love that. Do you find that, like, since the release of that poster, there was a lot more empathy and understanding in your workplace and in the broader community in which that information was disseminated? Because this poster can be found online anywhere, which I think is amazing, and it's probably reached so many different people geographically. But within your experience and community after that, do you feel like people's perception of you changed?
I think it's weird in terms of perception. So when that poster came out, I was teaching in a secondary school, and I think it helped my colleagues and teachers at the time understand the illness a bit more. So if they had students coming in with sickle cell, they were a bit more educated and a bit more aware of it as well. In terms of the perception of me, I think people, I talk about my illness quite openly because it's a part of me and it's how I deal with it as well. I have a love-hate relationship with it, but I just talk about it because it is what it is. I can't hide it, and I think people saw me. I think some people see me as, oh yes, Sanah with sickle cell, and some people see me as, oh, we need to be a bit careful around her. And some people see me as, oh yeah, do you know what? She's going through this thing. you know, she's cracking on. I don't know how other people see me.
Do you find that, because I like listening to you talk about your experience with other people and how they kind of categorize you differently depending on who they are, makes me feel like, I feel like even if we're entirely open about our illness and the ways that it impacts our body, I feel like because we're seen as so kind of competent and motivated, people still tend to minimize what you're going through, because it's like, oh, well, she has this chronic health condition, but she manages it so well, so she must be fine. And it goes back to that square one of like, again, just not understanding, not being able to kind of relate in that way. But I still feel like with the poster, it's important and imperative, because it still shows, like, what I loved about it was, it's like, here you see this beautiful woman, but like she's going through a crisis literally right now in front of you, and this is how it's impacting her body. So I think that's really important. I guess on the topic of if we think about like body insecurity and other people's perceptions, has sickle cell ever contributed to a sense of imposter syndrome with you?
At times, I feel... so I've got a funny walk. I walk with a bit of a limp, and people say to me, oh, like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But I don't know if it's to do with my limbs or my hips. My hips hurt a lot, especially if I'm going on long walks or anything like that. And I ache a lot. And that makes me feel uncomfortable, and I'm self-conscious of it. And that's something, even when I'm walking today, I would say I'm quite a confident person, but say when I'm walking, I feel a bit like, oh, like insecure, not insecure, but a bit like, oh, people looking at me funny or anything like that. If I say to anyone, you know, yeah, I have this disability, I've got this illness, people look at me like I'm taking the piss. I don't know if I'm allowed to say taking the piss.
No, go for it.
And I'm like, no, I'm not though. Like, it's genuine. Like, I'm genuinely in pain. If I say I need time off and people are like, are you sure? It makes me question. Sometimes, or when I was younger, it made me question, like, do I really need the time off? Should I just push through? And I think it's about finding that voice inside, like really just having that strength inside you to be like, no, this is what's right for me, and this is isn't what's right for me, and it doesn't matter about anybody else's opinion of me either. There's been times, there was a period of my life when I feel like where I felt like friends like didn't invite me on holidays or didn't want me to do things with them because they didn't want to stress me out, or they were scared of me having a crisis or anything like that. And I was like, oh, but I can still do these things, like don't put me into a box. But then there's other times when I'm explaining to someone, oh, I've got a sickle cell, and they're like, yeah, okay, not understanding or knowing how dangerous it is.
So it's like two ends of like total extremes, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because like, for example, there's a friend, and she has a birthday. She doesn't live close to me, but she'll say, oh, don't come. Oh, during COVID, she had a birthday during COVID, and this has stuck with me. And she's like, oh, no, I don't want you to come because I don't want you to be ill. And I get it. It was from a caring place and a loving place, but also I internalized that to be like, oh, am I not fit enough or well enough to be able to participate? Like, and it made me question my own how I felt about myself.
I mean, I guess, and it's so difficult because it's like you can't control other people's perceptions, but you can control your own. And I guess speaking from someone who, just hearing you talk about the way you walk, I can really relate to that, because I, up until the age of 28, I had a really significant limp because I had avascular necrosis, which for anyone that knows can happen from sickle cell. And I had a lot of cognitive dissonance with how I perceived myself in the mirror versus how other people saw me. And there was like this one memory that I have of walking down this busy street, and I felt really beautiful internally. Like, how sometimes you just wake up and you're feeling yourself. And then I remember like feeling really positive and confident. And then I looked in like the reflection of a clothing store, and I saw my walk and my limp, and I was like, it's almost like I didn't recognize that was me. Like I had this really it was a bit of a reality check of how I perceived myself at that time. And that for me, there was a lot of internalized shame with that. There was a lot of coming to terms with, just because I have a limp doesn't make me any less worthy, and it doesn't make me any less beautiful, or, but I think as women, we kind of are on a pedestal of kind of reaching other people's expectations and standards. I wonder if, do you ever feel like some days it's hard to keep up with that pressure of looking a certain way?
I think in terms of, so I heard the story, let me start again. So when I went to the hospital last week and I parked in the car park, and I know the car park attendant because he always sees me. And I was just saying to him, I just feel a bit down, and, I've got this problem, I've got sickle cell, And he's like, don't ever see it as a problem. It is not a problem. It's just your life, and your life is not a problem. That's your journey, and your journey is beautiful. If someone's got autism or anything, they're not a problem. That's their life. Their life shouldn't be seen as anything less than beautiful. So that really touched me. And then he went on to tell me a story about how a lady was driving up into the car park, and she was gorgeous, she was stunning, and she was there to see her husband, who was undergoing some treatment in the hospital. And she came out of the car, and she was in a wheelchair, and she had nothing downwards. She had no legs, nothing. I think she just stopped at her abdomen.
Wow.
And he said, from her face, I couldn't tell anything. But also, she had the most loving relationship with her husband. And it just goes to show that love isn't something you view, it's something you feel. And she couldn't, offer her husband anything in that respect. But he still loved her endlessly. And that story, and it was only last week, gave me so much fuel and confidence to be like, it doesn't matter what I look like. I don't need to perform to anybody's expectations. When I get ready for myself, because I like these clothes, because when I wear makeup, I feel a bit more awake and a bit more put together and stuff. But someone that respects you and loves you, it doesn't matter on the way your body is functioning. I truly believe that. But
that's so beautiful.
That's only come from this week, so
that's what a powerful realization to go through in a parking lot, just on your way to hospital. And it's funny because I feel like when you live with an invisible illness, people tend to be more honest and transparent with you, and you end up having these really organic, beautiful conversations with people. So how amazing that you just happened to have this chat. Obviously you've built a good rapport with the parking attendant, and that he took a moment out of his day to observe as well, because I think sometimes we can be so lost in our own ego and lost in our own lives that we kind of forget to stop and look up and notice other people. So the fact that he took that moment to realize, and then to put the two and two together of, at the end of the day, we're all here for love. We all want to be loved for who we are, and it's not about what you look like.
Not at all. But I have a badge so I can park in disabled spots, because during winter my crises are really bad. I can't walk long distances, and it's really cold up here as well all the time. And I get so much abuse, it's unreal when I park and I come out of the car and people can see me. And again, this links back to the posting beyond what you see. I've had so much abuse. People chase me down the street, swearing at me, screaming at me, old men screaming at me, police officers coming up to me, questioning me. It's been horrific. And when I've been with friends, I've been like, can we just wait a bit till the street quietens down? And they're like, no, don't be afraid, don't be ashamed. And they'll speak up for me and stuff, because I find it difficult sometimes. But that's always been a thing, probably where I feel a bit let me just navigate this situation carefully, because I don't want to receive the abuse. No one wants to receive the abuse, but it's out there and it happens. Because when people can't see you physically in a wheelchair or impaired, they have no understanding. There's that lack of understanding,
and they almost want an explanation. And everything you're saying I relate to every single day. There have been times when I haven't used a disability permit because I don't want the judgment. So it's just easier not to put it up, even if I'm in pain, even if I have to walk farther. And it's funny because I had a similar situation, Sanah, about a week ago. I went out for dinner with a good friend of mine, and she knows about my illness, but again, it comes back to sometimes people forget because they can't see it. And I parked in a disability park, and her response was like, "Are you sure we're allowed to park here? Like, why are we parking here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have a permit." And she said something like, "Oh, from work," like, because I work in the health industry. She kind of assumed it was for one of my clients. And I was like, "No, babe, like, this is my parking permit. Like, I have a disability." And people like really struggle with that concept. And just hearing like that the abuse is almost universal, that there's still this like lack of like understanding, it's just, to me, blows my mind. I guess like because you are so confronted with the reality of, I guess, other people's expectations and perceptions, a lot of the like you've used your social media to really propel others to think outside of the box. Is that what brought you to life coaching? And can you tell us a little bit about like your journey with life coaching?
Of course. So I have always been interested in all areas of life, and like when I was at school I wanted to be an astronaut and a fashion designer and a dancer and
I love that.
a lecturer and everything. I loved life. I couldn't pick one thing. And so when I graduated, I looked into life coaching because I was like, it allows me to explore every aspect of life. And I love talking to people, and I love helping people, and I love getting like, I'm very goal orientated and personal development orientated. I love that field, and helping people through that journey as well. And I think naturally I can, if someone says they're stuck or they don't know how to get to here, I can see that path. And so it's something I explored when I was 24, and then I let it go because I was like, I need to get into the real world, I need to make money, I need to do what everybody else is doing. And I did that for a good 9 years. And I would go in and out of hospital though and have crisis, and I'd really question what I'm doing with my life. And I'd be like, if I was to lose my life right now, if I wasn't to make it for another day, would I be happy with what I'm doing? And I'd be like, no, like I don't feel like I'm doing anything fulfilling. I'm not using my life, my purpose, my illness to do anything really, apart from make money, like in my corporate career. And so I quit my job last year, my full-time job. I had a great job, great company, great team, great salary, but I was like, this just isn't fulfilling me. And I quit, and I had no plan, and I booked, so then I signed up to a life coach who I sort of read about, trusted, and we started going on this journey together. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I know deep down I can do this. But also I have known for a very, very long time that I wanted to help people, but I'm not a medical professional. When I was doing my A-levels, first of all, I wanted to be a doctor. And I was like, oh, I want to be like in the army tents, like helping people, like running across. And
amazing.
But then, because I've been in hospital for so long, it's like, I don't want to step into another hospital. I don't want my job to be in a hospital as well. So it's like, I'm not going into medicine. So I'm not a trained medic, so I can't help people that way. But this was a way I can help people. And it was really to help, well, what I want to do is really help people with chronic illnesses get from A to Z. When I see like Paralympians, it lights me up so much. It gives me so much fuel and passion and energy. I want to help more people get there, because they, you know, if someone can play basketball with no legs, or swim without their limbs, like we can do anything. And I think we have so much gold and power within us that's just not even touched. And I really want to like unleash that for people.
I love that so much, Sanah. And I think it's really important because, you know, like we forget that, like, as humans, we're so complex. And even if we are going through something that is a challenge, like there's so much of us that's more than that. And which I guess leads me to my next question, which is, you know, we all have that little voice in our head that tells us we're not good enough. How do we overcome that?
I think it's a few. I think there's quite a few things. It's a really complex question. You know, people's childhood traumas play into that massively, and their upbringings and what they've experienced and witnessed and all the trauma that they've had. And as an adult, you really have to unpack it and deal with it. I've seen it play out in so many people's lives where they're still like, all that childhood trauma is still directing the way they are in the world. But I think, like, just truly believe it. Like, I don't know if everybody has this feeling like, do you know what, like, there's something I'm here to do. I'm not just here just to float like a piece of dust and then go. Like, I'm here to do something. There's a reason why I'm here.
A purpose, a deeper purpose. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get lost in like corporate world or just everyday business of life. But I think once you know you're here to do something, there's a reason why I am me, you are you. Do you know what I mean? And once you know that, it's like, okay, I'm enough. I'm here to do something, and I'm going to do it. And it's about figuring out what you need to do. But also, just looking in the mirror and being like, yeah, do you know what? I am good. I'm enough. It doesn't matter if I've got one arm, two arms, one leg, two legs. If I've got an illness or not got an illness, I'm here for a reason, just like everybody else. And I think that is probably the fundamental, the baseline to, you know, developing that self-enoughness, but then also layering that with the development with, like, for me it's meditation. Breath work has been incremental in my healing journey. When I come out of hospital, I'm like a shell of a person. My soul is broken. I feel lost. I feel disillusioned. I feel like I'm not enough. I feel like I'm not good enough for anything. Like, my body keeps failing me. I can't keep dealing with all the trauma. But when I go to breath work, I'm like, actually, my body's really strong. It's weathered so many things. It's stronger than most people's. And that's come through breath work and, you know, just doing the work, essentially.
Oh, I've got goosebumps and there's like tears in my eyes. Just like, I just really appreciate your vulnerability. Like, it means a lot to me to hear. It's interesting with breath work because, so like, I've tried breath work once, and I actually, like, I loved the sensation I got from it. I don't know if like it was hyperventilating, but I felt like, you know, like, obviously with sickle cell, you can feel quite anemic and quite short of breath. And like, my thing is music. I love singing. I love anything to do with the arts. But even just singing gives me like shortness of breath. Like, I really struggle with that. Has breath work, have you found like it's strengthened your core, or do you feel like there are some days where you just don't have the energy to do it? How do you incorporate that into your life?
So I go to breathwork classes weekly for an hour, and I go religiously. Like, it is such a core part of my week. It's my chance to really connect to something, whether it's something, a higher being, or something really internally strong, or my own inner wisdom, and it gives me the answers I need. I remember when I first went, I'd come out of hospital, I had a crisis, and basically the class I go to, it's like circular breathing, and I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but I think, so we all have DMT stored within us, which is a chemical that you can find in psychedelics. And when you go to do breath work, it's not only oxygenizing your body and stuff, so I feel like I'm doing goodness for my, biologically, for my cells, for my body. I'm oxygenizing my body, but also you release a bit of DMT. You go on a bit of a trip. And so my first class, I remember, I felt like I could see myself in a hospital bed, and I could see my doctor and my mum and my grandparents and then all my friends at the end of the hospital bed. And my doctor had said, we can't save her anymore. We can't save her again. I've saved her too many times. I can't save her. And everyone at the end of my bed was all crying, and I felt like I died, and I had like this out-of-body experience. And I came out of that session like in tears, flooded in tears. But then I realised that was a massive fear of mine that I needed to deal with, and I was able to bring to light and then deal with that fear that I had of dying in hospital and not making it out of hospital. I'd had so many traumatic crises. But then through different sessions, I've dealt with different things in different ways. One session, for example, I felt like I was floating, and I could feel like two people holding my hands, and I was like, oh, I'm really calm here. I'm really peaceful. I don't know why I'm stressing. Like, I don't know why I stress about anything. And there was this voice, and it was like, no, you need to go back to earth, and you need to do something. Like, don't worry about money. Don't worry about all this stuff that's easy to get. You just need to make sure you're on earth and you're healing people. And I was like, okay, fine. And I came out of the session, I felt so much more clarity. There's another session. I can go on with all these stories.
Sanah, you've given me like goosebumps. Like, just listening to you talk about this is just phenomenal.
There's one session, and I felt like I was being baptized, and I'm not Christian, but I felt like I was being baptized, and I was getting this message, and it's like, you let go of every day, just let it go. So every day you're being washed anew. Let go of the past, and it's these little messages I'm getting through breath work that are really helping me ground myself and feel like I'm enough, and that I've got the answers within, and I am protected, and I am held, and I can do anything. There was one session where I felt like I was in this storm, and I was drowning in this storm, and it's a really choppy storm, and I was like, I can't do this. Why am I in this storm? I don't want to do this. But then actually by the end of the class, I was like, it's a skill. I think the quote is, it's a skill. Skillful sailors are made through choppy seas. Like, you're not going to be skilled if you're going through a calm sea. You need to be able to weather different things to become extremely skilled, and you are extremely skilled. And like, when you let go of the fear, you can expand. You can expand and help people, or just be who you want to be. And there was one time I saw I'm telling you, I can go on for ages. There's one time I saw a turtle, and I was like, what is this turtle doing? But then I realised it's like, go slow and steady. You don't need to be in a rush or in a race with anybody. You just go at your own pace, go slow, and you'll achieve whatever you need to achieve. So I think that's me. It's been so powerful.
That's it's so powerful to hear you say that, and it's such a different message to what we hear in society, because I feel like the rhetoric you hear is, work really hard, work really long hours, and that's kind of a very ableist attitude. And someone with an invisible illness like sickle cell, we can't go hard and fast because it doesn't look like normal burnout. It looks like hospitalization. It looks like a crisis. And I think just the analogy of that turtle going slow and steady, and even just the power in saying no to the corporate job and saying, no, I'm going to follow my own path, even if that looks different. There's real power in that, Sanah. So thank you so much for sharing that, because it's very vulnerable for a lot of people, and it wouldn't have been an easy decision for you to decide to leave your job at that point and follow your life purpose. But oh my goodness, I'm so glad you did, because so many people need to hear that message and hear what you have to say. You touched on like your fear of like dying in hospital. And I understand that a couple of years ago you had a DVT in hospital, and you were quite vocal about the failing of the hospital system. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened to you?
Yeah. So I had moved to Dubai, and it was like a dream to move to Dubai and live this like amazing lifestyle. And I got there, did it, and I was so proud of myself. I felt like I was at the peak of my life. I was like, I can't believe it. I've done it with my illness. I've done it with my health. Got myself to, creating the life I want to create. And I came home to visit family, and I was getting really sick at home. I'd been on holiday, went swimming in the sea. Well, I ended up going into a sea which was quite cold, and it wasn't out of my. Some friends sort of ushered me into the sea. It was quite cold, and by the time I'd come back home to visit my mum, I was getting quite ill, and I had this really bad cough, and it was getting worse and worse. And the day I was supposed to fly back out to Dubai, I ended up in hospital being admitted in, and I was having acute chest syndrome for the second time, and I was like, oh no, like this is terrible. Had to So I've always been told I can't have blood unless it's an extreme circumstance, like a car accident or pregnancy or anything like that, because I've got antibodies. So they were like, we need to give you blood. And I was like, oh, like, I've been told I can't have blood. Like, is there anything else you can do? And they were like, no, it's really bad. You need to have a red cell exchange. So I was like, okay, fine. Had this red cell exchange, and they ended up doing the exchange manually in the hospital. Now, I'm in a city. I'm not in a small town or village. I'm in, the third biggest city in the UK. Mm-hmm. So, we've got the equipment, we've got the resources. And so they started doing this red cell exchange manually, and they stopped it halfway through because I was on ICU, I was in intensive care while they were doing it. They stopped it halfway through and sent me back down to a ward. Got back onto the ward, and then my consultant was like, why have you stopped the red cell exchange? You need to continue. So they called out another haematologist, was doing it manually in the middle of the night, and I genuinely felt like I was like a piece of animal being slaughtered. There was blood going all over the walls, all over the floor. The nurse was vocally saying, I don't know what to do, I've never done this before, I've never done this procedure before, I don't know what to do. Doctors like sweating, like stressed out. It was on the ward, like you've only got curtains around you, you're on a ward and you've got other patients next to you. It was so traumatic. Anyway, they did the exchange, and then they'd left the line in my leg, and the sickle cell team had kept telling the ward staff, you need to take the line out, and they weren't taking it out. Every day I was saying, please, can you take this out, because I don't want anything to happen. They weren't taking it out.
And when you say line, just to clarify, is it like a cannula, like a needle?
No, it's thicker, so it goes into your groin, and basically it's quite thick. I don't know the exact word for it. Femoral line, I think it is.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So one so it's a thick tube. It goes in, and one takes out your blood, and the other one puts in blood. So 4 days later, they take out this line. The doctor comes to review me and is about to discharge me. And then my leg was aching. I was like, I can't walk. Can you just check my leg? Because it's really painful. They check my leg, and they're like, oh, you've got a blood clot from the line. They've left the line in for too long. And then my leg swelled like 4 times bigger. It was so painful. So I didn't get discharged. It took 4 people to get me off the bed onto the toilet. I'd scream in agony when I just needed to go to the toilet for a wee. Like, it was horrific. Like, I couldn't move at all. Friends would come and visit me, and they'd have to take my knickers down for me to go to the toilet. I couldn't walk. Wow. It was awful. I felt like I lost all my dignity, everything. Then they came and said to me, the doctors came and said to me, you've got 2 options. You live with lifelong impairment, or you undergo surgery where there's a risk of bleeding in the brain, and it can be fatal, and you could die during the procedure. And I had to sign a form and stuff, and I said, I'm not living with a leg like this. I'd rather take my chances and go through the procedure. We're signing this form. I think it was to say something like, if anything goes wrong, I've accepted the procedure. Went through this procedure, and I felt like I was in a coma. Like, I couldn't move for 3 days. Like, I couldn't move my body. I had sepsis, my arms, everything was bruised, everything was purple. I was throwing up constantly, like like really bad, like shaking all the time. And I ended up staying in for a month. I couldn't fly anymore. They said to me I couldn't go back to Dubai because I couldn't do the flying because of the blood clot. I had to wear stockings after the procedure. I couldn't walk. I had to do physiotherapy, and I was about to turn 30, and I was so embarrassed. Every time friends would come to the hospital to see me, I was so embarrassed that I felt like I failed. I genuinely felt like I failed at life. I've tried so hard. I feel like I'm crying now.
Wow.
But I felt like I tried so hard to create my life and build a life, and it was just snatched again. But the DVT wasn't because of sickle cell; it was because of the hospital. And so that was a massive ordeal, and I had PTSD after, and I had to, I was in therapy, and that is sort of been a big thing I've had to deal with over the past few years and unpack, because I've found it so difficult to deal with, and I've been so scared of going back into hospital. because it messed up, like, I just feel like it messed up my life a bit. But I'm on the other side of it, you know, we learn through what we go through, and it makes us stronger.
What do you want people to know about hospital care? Like, what do you want nurses and doctors to know?
I think just kindness goes such a long way with nurses. When you have a nurse that is genuinely caring about, like, hospital's supposed to be the safest place you go to, the safest place, and that I had lost that. I'd lost that trust in the system. My doctor, my consultant, I trust completely. He's one of my guardian angels. He's you know, saved my life so many times, genuinely saved my life. But there's nurses and other doctors that don't know sickle cell, and I know that there's an attitude towards sickle cell in the hospital where people just see you as a drug seeker because you know what you need to treat you. Like, I know I need morphine, I need a piece of fentanyl, I need IV paracetamol when I go into hospital. I'm not there for any other reason than to get treated with the medication. Otherwise, I would stay at home.
Yep.
But when you communicate that, people think you're a drug seeker, and I think people with sickle cell have been stigmatized to, you know, in the system, where it's like, oh, you know, they've got this condition, but they just want drugs, and that's not the case at all. You know, every crisis, and you know this, like, every crisis is like an earthquake in your body. Your organs get weaker. Internally, you get weaker with every crisis, and you just want the support, you want the help, but the compassion is, when a nurse or a doctor doesn't have any compassion or kindness, it makes the worst 10 times more horrific, because you already feel like you're in prison, you already feel like your life's just been stripped away from you, you're in pain, you know, your life's just stopped, and then on top of that you've got people that you don't know whether they really care for you or they're just doing the job, you know, they're stressed out, and you're ill, and it's like, so I think compassion, I you know, for sickle cell, for every patient, needs to be there. And so sometimes it's there, and sometimes it's a bit lost.
Yeah, I think having that compassion is so important. You know, it's the difference between being afraid of the hospital, which, as you said, is supposed to be the safest place, and yet there's so much fear and anxiety around going, because it's like, how are you going to be perceived when you get there? I know for myself, like, I have regular red cell exchanges once a month. That's how I manage my sickle cell. And like, my hospital team, like, I'll take them Krispy Kreme donuts and we'll crack jokes. And it just makes so much of a difference to have a team of nurses that you can tell that they genuinely love what they do and they genuinely care about you, and you're not just another number. So I think, you know, outside of the medical expertise and all the things that you can do for a patient, I think ultimately it comes down to love and humanity, which is what, you know, what we've talked about this whole episode is love and compassion and kindness, and the things that connect us together at a really human level. So thank you for, you know, talking about that, because it's something that you don't think about when you go into hospital, but is so important.
I think,
Sanah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, when I'm in hospital, like, I'm so afraid of being left, because I don't know if you've experienced the same thing, but there's times when you're pressing your buzzer and you're like, I'm in so much, like, there's been times when my PCA has run out and I'm like, I need some, like, I'm in so much pain, it's getting worse, and they just fob you off, or they ignore you, and they're like, oh, it's coming, or it's not been ordered, or we've lost the prescription, or it's on its way. And I'm like, I'm getting worse here, like, I genuinely feel like I'm going to die here, and this is not where I want to die. But these are real thoughts and conversations that I think we have frequently going in and out of hospital, and it's not normal to have those conversations. You know, my friends don't question whether they're going to die or not in hospital. And that's why I think that kindness and that compassion from hospital staff and from everyone, and that understanding about sickle cell
is so important.
Yeah,
absolutely. Sanah, thank you so much for being here today. Beyond words, you've made me cry, you've made me laugh. Like, I feel like we've been through the whole spectrum of emotions today. Sanah, where can we find you? Where can we find you regarding life coaching and social media, and just where can we follow you?
So you can follow me on Instagram at I am Sanah Shaikh, and my TikTok is at Sanah Shaikh, I think. So it's SANAH but yeah, I'm on both those channels, so you can connect with me, we can speak, you can DM me. I'm here.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Again, I just want to say thank you. I will also leave all of Sanah's socials in the description down below so that you can go and check out her work. Just on a really funny note, yesterday I was driving with my partner and I was telling him how excited I was to, have this conversation with you. And I was reflecting on your name, Sanah. And it's funny because my name is Sophia Anna, but at work they shorten it to Sanah in my email account. I'm like, it must be fate. It must be fate.
So honestly, it's been an honour and a privilege, and you're doing wonderful, amazing things. And when I see you, posting, I'm like, gosh, you're so gorgeous, and you're cracking on with life. And it's so nice. It's so nice to see you sort of push through sickle cell and shine a light in such an amazing way.
Thank you so much, Sanah.